part of Double P Media, doublepmedia.com.
Spoiler alert, when this podcast talks about the books of his Dark Materials, it does so in the context of the most recent book. And when it talks about the television show on the BBC and HBO, it does so in the context of the most recent episode. You've been warned.
You're listening to The Dust, a His Dark Materials podcast.
Welcome to The Dust Podcast. It's your 28th favorite podcast out of about 10 that are actively covering this show, His Dark Materials. We're covering Season 2, Episode 7, Æsahættr, written by the showrunner Jack Thorne, directed by Jamie Childs. This is like his 5th episode now, 6th episode directing now for this series. And here is your synopsis. As all paths converge on Chitakaze, the mission to find Will's father becomes more pressing. Having survived the balloon crash, Japari and Lee try to locate the knife bearer, but the Magisterium are in close pursuit. Ruta updates Serafina on Azriel's plans, but Serafina insists her duty is to Lyra. Mary consults the I Ching on her task after bidding goodbye to Angelica and Paula. My name is Double M.
Double M.
That stands for Matt Murdock. Thanks for joining me. And my co-host is a person who enjoys traveling in suitcases. It's Holly.
What's travel, Matthew? It's 2020. I don't know this term.
Well, just think of the last time that I stuck you into a suitcase, and you'll remember.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I think you were there the last time I traveled as we were leaving Nashville in the airport together. And you did watch my suitcases for me. That was really nice of you.
I was happy to watch your bags for you for a minute. I did not check to see if Lyra was stuffed in there. But Holly, how would you rate this season finale for Series 2? A big episode. How did you rank it on a scale of 1 to 10? And don't forget to use doubles because we're part of the Double P family of podcasts.
Well, speaking of airports and traveling, I ranked this episode 9.75 out of 10 double L's.
Double L's?
Lyra luggage.
Oh.
I really like this episode a lot. I think both Season 1 and Season 2 managed to pull off my favorite episodes in the finale of each season. So now I can safely say, my favorite episodes from both seasons are the finales. It's just so good. I'm an emotional person, so my rankings are kind of based on how the episode made me feel emotionally. And this episode really did it for me. Everything in this fantastic season was leading up to this episode and a little bit beyond. And if you happen to listen to me on our book section last week, you'll know that I got my wish, and my wish was I wanted to cry this episode, and I sobbed like a baby. Great job, showrunners, writers, actors, crew, everyone, everything involving this show. I cried a lot.
Now, wait a minute, Holly. So you're saying that you need more of an emotional response in order to raise your rating of an episode?
Yeah, essentially, I think that's what it comes down to for me. I really like to feel moved by shows, things, books, whatever I'm interested in. It's like art. The more of an emotional response it evokes from me, the more I appreciate it and enjoy it. That's going to involve everything with like good storytelling, good acting, good writing, everything, wardrobe, everything that makes the show good. When it all comes together and creates an emotional response for me that I feel inside my body, whether it's tears, whether it's just angst, nerves, if I'm jumping out of my seat. I think that's kind of how I base my rankings. And, oh, man, we can say it now. Lyra is Eve. What? Oh. Yay. Finally, we can get that off our chests.
Yes.
For real.
Yes, we can say Voldemort finally without worrying about he who shall not be named coming after us. Thank goodness. I agree with you. I think good art is supposed to make you feel something more so than anything else. I don't get into dissecting the art too much, but I do love a show that makes me feel something. I like a show that will make me think something every once in a while too. I feel like that's the purpose of art more so than a lot of the dissecting that I do with the music or that we do with the story itself. I gave this episode what I call 9.6, what I like to call double D's.
Double D's.
Daddy discussions. That was an interesting scene for me, very much so. I respected, and I don't know how other people received this, but I did respect the way the issue didn't just go away, because it wouldn't for a kid or even an adult. Those kind of issues would not just go away magically with a hug or I'm here now or we're going to go home or any of that. So I respected that. But there's probably some things that I could nitpick if I really wanted to. But like you, I was kind of emotionally overwhelmed by this whole episode, and I'm probably not going to bother too much with the Matt's Tomatoes this week that I've established well on this and just about every podcast that I've ever done, meaning that it's issues that don't really matter. We've had commentary from a lot of our friends of the podcast and also our listeners that Subtle Knife, this second book that this series is based on, is pretty much their favorite book of this trilogy, and we understand that there are other books outside of this trilogy by Philip Pullman. This season has certainly been my favorite season. I like this season better than season 1. I think some people would argue with me about that, but I feel like this season they kind of figured out what kind of a show they were, and they really worked hard at it, and it felt really good this season, and not only faithful to the books, but also adventurous in straying away from it in ways that didn't destroy the spirit of the book. And the ending of this particular episode reminded me of my favorite, what I call second movie, which is Empire Strikes Back, because Lyra being carted off by Coulter is very Boba Fett, taking Han Solo away in Empire Strikes Back. I love that. And of course, you know why I had to bring up Star Wars, right? Because I've got to remind you that Parsec Passion has wrapped up their coverage of season 2 of The Mandalorian, but their episodes were always there for you to listen to. So we want you to find the Double P family of podcasts. You can do so and find out what all of their links are by going to @double, the letters PHQ on Twitter, or you can find them on Facebook and join their page there, facebook.com/double, the letters PHQ. You can find our videos on their YouTube as well as all of the videos of their podcasts from the last year. And you can do that by searching on YouTube for Double P Media, or you can go to this little cheat here, youtube.com/user/what, Holly?
FITTENTRIM.
Yes, and be sure to search wherever you get your podcasts for Parsec Passion Podcast. That's a triple P. They're covering The Mandalorian and all things Star Wars over there, and there's lots of other great podcasts that I've done with those guys over this last year, including coverage of Babylon Berlin. Catfish and I did a podcast on Penny Dreadful City of Angels and a podcast on Lovecraft Country. But just go to Double P for all of that stuff. We gave you our ratings, but we also want to know what you thought of this episode. We want to know what you thought of this season. So to contact us, send tweets to @TheDustPodcast on Twitter. You can send emails to dustpodcast@gmail.com, or you can call 314-269-0421. Don't forget that by submitting 3 words or by leaving a written review on a podcast app where you can, and you can find all of those podcast app links and the back episodes of this podcast at mattsaudioblog.com. That's MATTS audioblog.com. But doing any of those things by December 30th, 2020, and as of the release of this podcast, that'll be this Thursday, December 30th, 2020. That's all the time you have left to get us a 3-word description or to leave a written review on whatever podcast app that you're using to be entered into our contest to win a whole bunch of cool His Dark Materials stuff. Now, we didn't have quite the plethora of things that we could give away to our listeners that Parsec Passion Podcast has. I think they had something like 30 or 50 prizes on that podcast. But here's what our grand prize winner is going to get. They're going to get, of course, because this podcast focuses on the music of Lorne Balfe, you're going to get a free copy of the Season 2 official television soundtrack in the format of your choice. If you want it in CD, I'll get it to you that way. If you want it in just MP3s from like Amazon or iTunes, I'll get it to you that way. So you make the choice as to what kind of format it is, but you'll get that. Also, if you want to check out the official merchandise store for His Dark Materials, just check our Twitter for links to that. But we're going to allow you to choose a t-shirt if you're our winner. Also, I originally had said at the 20-pound level, whatever U.S. amount that is, or lower. But you know what? They're really not that expensive. You just pick out a shirt, and I will get it to you in whatever size that you ask for and however much it costs. You're going to get a copy of all of Holly's books. She's going to personally send you her books. No, we're not going to do that. I thought we agreed to do that. Okay, we're not going to do that. So instead, I'm going to send you not any copy of the original books. I expect you to already either own them or you're going to want to go get them after having seen this season, right? So since we lost Lee Scoresby in this episode, I thought it might be nice to get a little bit more history for you on Lee Scoresby and his time with Yorick. Because when we first meet him in this series, he's already looking for his old friend Yorick. And how did he become an old friend of Yorick's? Well, you find out in this book by Philip Pullman called Once Upon a Time in the North. And we're going to send you the paperback edition, wonderful illustrations by John Lawrence as well. So that is the grand prize winning package. We're also going to do a runner-up prize. And that's also going to include a Lorne Balfe Season 2 official television soundtrack in the format of your choice. And the bonus for both of those prizes is, when we can schedule it, you will get a sit down with me and Holly on a Zoom call or StreamYard or something like that, where we can all just sit down and talk about how we felt about the season. Both our grand prize winner and our runner-up prize winner will get those. We're probably going to lump that all into one session because I don't like taking time away from Holly's demon saving. She spends a lot of time saving animals. So we'll try and do all that in one session, and we'll figure out how to schedule that so that we can all be at the same place at the same time in the future. So once again, December 30th, 2020 is your deadline. You need to either leave us a written review, which really helps us if you at the podcast app that you get us from, or you can submit a 3-word description of really any episode of His Dark Materials now that we've gotten through 2 full series of this show. Be sure to get them in to us by December 20th, 2020. Let's make it midnight December 30th, 2020 in Greenwich Mean Time, UK time. We'll do it that way just to set a specific hour deadline so that I can stop checking the Twitter for half a minute and do something else. Holly, you ready to get into this episode?
Let's do it.
All right, so we start with 100 seconds of previously on stuff. Nothing shocking there. And I apologize to Sasha Frost. I've been mispronouncing her character's name for a good deal of the season. But Raina is starting to recover and recounts that the Spectre attack made her feel numb and cold and somewhere in between life and death. Serafina refuses Lyra's offer to leave, or to let Serafina leave, but says that once Will's father is found, they must return to their world because it's, of course, much safer there. She knows how the knife frightened the Spectres, as she says to Will, but Will says it frightens everyone. And then we go to another witch, Ruta, Scotty, who is somewhere, kind of hard to tell. It appears to have a very red look to it. We might know where she was if we had only gotten that Azrael episode in between. But she's following some Cliff Ghasts, who we saw in season 1, attacking Lee's balloon. She's following them around, and the Cliff Gas start to have a conference. I guess you could call that a double C. And they're talking about this coming war and how Azrael needs the knife to win. But if he doesn't get it, then the Cliff Gasts are going to have them Thanksgiving every day for 365, 24/7. And they're pretty happy about that, it would seem. But that urges Ruta to make sure and hide a little bit as the Cliff Gasts all decide that they want their meal and they fly off. And then we get into the intro credits.
Do you think the Spectres like their dust baked, deep fried, roasted? I don't know. I think Spectres from the South will have their dust deep fried if they're anything like me. I don't know about you.
I like Cajun dust for sure.
Here's me, a Cajun, telling you that we like to deep fry our dust.
Okay, well, deep fried Cajun dust. That's how I like my dust. Something I don't like is the description of what it's like to be attacked by a specter. That was scary stuff, Holly.
But did she say that it was like life was meaningless, or did she just say, what was your interpretation of what she said?
Yeah, the impression that I got was that you're just feeling like you're in a state in between life and death, and that nothing about your life seems to matter anymore. That's kind of the interpretation that I got.
Okay. I feel like I spent a lot of 2020 being eaten by specters. Depression, am I right?
It's been rough.
Yeah.
It's been rough.
Yeah, it sure has. It was scary. It was a scary description. Because I guess we don't really know up until now what it felt like, because nobody came out of it alive before. So it's kind of cool that we got that from that witch.
Yeah. And I guess if you're a TV only person, you're probably surprised that Cliff Gas can actually communicate with each other, because in season 1, they just seemed like they were just kind of growling at everything, but not really saying anything. But here we get a full conversation with Æsahættr mentioned and all that.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting them. I forgot them for a minute. Like I knew, they're in the book, but we just got so far in this season without seeing them. I kind of forgot about them, and it made me really excited. I was like, oh, I don't know why I'm excited to see these terrifying creatures, and they're talking. Yes, okay, they kept this in. This is cool. I thought they looked really good. CGI wise, I thought they looked fantastic. And listening to them talk was really cool too. I like the voice effects they used. It felt good considering what I know from the books. I liked what they did here a lot.
Yeah. I don't think I would have understood them if it hadn't been for the subtitles.
Absolutely.
I don't speak fluent Cliff Gast at all, but nonetheless, it was nice.
It was a good horror effect. That was our horror moment from season 1, and this year they gave it to Bella Ramsey. But yeah, I liked that. I thought they looked great this time around. Good job, team.
Excellent. Well, let's get back to the Reyna recovery region. That's a triple R, and Will's having dreams again. Hot Shaman this time is telling Will that the knife is the only thing that can destroy the Authority. Ooh, everything about the Authority starts coming up in this episode. Will wakes, and then him and Pan have a little bit of a heart-to-heart, and they talk about who's the most brave, and neither Will nor Pan want to own up to who's braver than the other. They just think that, well, the other one's braver than I am. But there's comparisons to Yorick made, and comparisons to Lyra, and Will calls Lyra his best friend. Aw, and Pan confirms that Will is her best friend. Aw, and then and as all this conversation's going on, Pan says, "Well, we better get some sleep. That's what we're supposed to be doing here." He crawls back to Lyra, and we see that Lyra has been awake the whole time and heard it all. Yay, that was cute.
So cute. Go ahead.
In the jungle, Hot Shaman, he's using his internal GPS and magic radar to get a fix on Will, while Lee and Hester are saying goodbye to the balloon. As Lee says, they're just insects walking around like everyone else. And Hester says that Lee could never be an insect. Aw. And Hot Shaman announces his radar is now locked. He knows where to find the bearer. And he compliments Scoresby as picking a good place to crash. But they got to get moving because they're sure that the magisterium is not far behind. I just want to say about the insect thing. I know that last week I said that I'm terrified of heights and everything. Flying doesn't bother me that much. Taking off and landing does bother me a little bit. But one of the things that I do love about flying is once you get to a certain height, nothing really is all that clear to you, especially someone with my old man eyes that I have now. And you do. Everything looks like it's a little ant farm. I kind of love that little bit. And I'm sure that that's what this reference was to. When you're a person who's been flying around in a balloon for years, everything does look like insects crawling around on the ground to you. So I love that.
That's good. Yeah. I guess I didn't like fully grasp that perspective, but yeah, that makes sense. Oh, Hester.
Yeah, but nonetheless, Hester realizes that no matter what, he's still a real person. He's her human down here on the ground. He's no insect at all. I love that. He likes me too. We've got this whole bit of Pan. He's basically passing the note. Do you like me? Check yes or no. And the Children of the Prophecy theme is playing underneath Pan and Lyra. I'll be talking about the music a lot that isn't Lee Scoresby's theme, because that's what's going to be the coverage on our music part of this podcast. But last week, we explored as to whether the Children of the Prophecy theme is a love theme as well as kind of a mission theme for the two of them. And I don't know. Now we have to think about that again, I suppose, because this playing underneath the two of them seems very much like it could be as much of a love theme or a friendship theme, at least, as it is a mission theme for the two of them to fulfill a prophecy. The subtle knife theme was playing underneath Japari when he was talking about finding the bearer. And, man, I did really feel for Lee. That balloon has been his whole life for, you can guess, a long time. And he's just, as we see, as this episode goes along, he's willing to sacrifice anything for Lyra. So that got me. Yeah. Oh,
both of these scenes here are just so heartwarming. Just so much warmth building up in my chest as I'm watching it, and it was a lot. I guess I'll start with the Lyra and Pan stuff. It was just so precious and beautiful how they talk to each other, and Lyra's face when Pan crawls back over to her, and you could just see that. I know that face. I know that face from like firsthand experience. It was just, she nailed it. Oh my God, he likes me too. You're spot on with that, I think. It's just so cute, precious, pure. They're just pure beings. I'm gonna love on all of these scenes with Lyra and Will, or Lyra and Pan, for this whole episode. I thought they were all very well done. And then Lee stuff. Oh my God, that line was great. But what hit me was his response, and when he just says you rabbit, and the look on his face and the delivery and Lynn's delivery of that line. It was just perfect. Man. These two have the best human-demon relationship in the whole series. It's so pure. And since I knew what was going to happen to them by the end of this episode, it just made this little exchange so much more powerful for me. I love them.
Mrs. Coulter probably doesn't appreciate Lee and Hester's love for each other at all, as we see as a result of this episode. But she looks through to Takaze. She's looking for Lyra clues, and the golden monkey finds the tavern and Lyra's coat. Coulter grabs the coat and does some double S's.
Double S's.
Saddened sniffing.
I got a better one.
Oh, what's that?
Double C.
Double C.
Coat cuddling.
Oh, I do like coat cuddling better than saddened sniffing. That's awesome. Now, Lena reports that her demon has seen another human in town. She's the one that's not Reyna. Serafina then sends Lena to investigate, and she also sends Reyna to do a little specter scouting. That's another double S, I suppose. Then we go to Angelica, Paula, and Mary, and they found the adult camp, which we never really see. We do kind of hear sounds from it, but the kids invite her to stay for a while. But Mary's mountain mission, that's a triple M, that means that she can't stick around. So she finds some flower petals as she leaves them, and they go off to the camp, excited, I guess, maybe, to get orders to take a bath for the first time in a while. Seraphina's very adamant about her leadership. Later on in this episode, she's going to flat out tell Ruta, it's like, I don't care what Azrael says. This is my mission. And here, at the same time, she's certainly willing to give orders to everybody else. She sends Reyna right back out there, and Reyna's barely recovered, but to look for the very thing that tried to void her receipt, I suppose you could say. So that got me. What about you, Holly? What do you think?
I think Seraphina, I don't know if she's ruthless. I feel like it's ruthless sending Reyna out versus Ruta, because her and Ruta are equals. They're both queens of their own clans. And then the other two witches that are with Seraphina, I just figured were part of Seraphina's clan and under her command anyway. So I guess I didn't read too much into that like you did.
Yeah. Well, you nearly got killed by this specter, so go out there and try again.
I mean, I gotta be safe, I don't know. She can fly higher than maybe the specters can. I don't know. Maybe we could talk about specters flying later in book talk, or didn't bother me.
I think in last week's episode, actually, Jean-Paris at one point said that we're safer up here because they can't get this high or something like that. So yeah, she probably can fly higher than them. That's a good point. Wish we'd have seen some of the adults, given the way that all of this played out. I know we've talked about this in book sections before, but it was like that Angelica and all of those kids were out doing a duty for the parents, like you said, gathering food or what have you. It doesn't seem like they've really placed that into the story just based on what's on screen. I guess you could imply to yourself that they were out there, but they almost seemed happy to be back. And the thing I don't understand is, if they're so happy to be back, why did they leave in the first place? And you had come up with the idea and the way that it plays in the books, they're out gathering stuff and everything. But it just didn't feel like that ever came across to a television viewer to me.
No, and that was just kind of me guessing from my book knowledge, because they really didn't. And thinking back, I think Angelica even describes it as like, oh, they all fled to the mountains. So it doesn't sound like it's like they knew about where they were, but they didn't go with them. They just decided to stay in the city for some reason. And maybe Angelica and Paolo specifically, just because they specifically like lost their parents. So they didn't really have adults to tend to them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And the one person who was somewhat of an adult was Tulio, who was trying to
who was getting the knife. Yeah. So I think a lot of people will probably be maybe lukewarm on this scene. It didn't really bother me one way or the other. I thought it was just kind of nice to see Mary doing something genuinely nice for some kids, because that's just her character and that's what she would do. And she is the only character in this series to do zero harm to any person or thing, like anything. She's the serpent, but right now she's a boop snoot snick and not a danger noodle. So
you and that YouTube talk, I don't know, with you kids today.
This scene was fine for me. I wasn't concerned about not seeing the parents or the adults, and I think if they move on from this completely, that'll be fine with me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Something that won't seem to move on is those darn flower petals, because we see them here and then we see them later on. It's like the angels are leaving her a little trail to follow or something like that, I guess, right? Yeah,
I can only think of the Queen of Love and Beauty herself, Lyanna Stark, when I see those. It looks like blue rose petals, so that's like the only thing that comes to mind. And I don't understand. I don't understand what they're doing with them to blowing Mary in the right direction, I guess. Like, follow the rose petals. I don't know. I just get back in Game of Thrones mode when I see it, so.
We don't want Mary to get lost, but Will wants to lose the witches and search for Dad. He says, let's just get out of here, Lyra, come on. He keeps thinking about things like stuff that we mentioned in season 1 seemed important, that he remembered his mom saying, like, take up his father's mantle. But, Lyra just wants to keep everybody safe, obviously because of what happened to Roger, but she doesn't want to let Will down because of what she overheard last night. Will says that they've made each other stronger and that it's their journey now. They should just move on. Lena, she's headed into town to check out who that person with the demon is. And she checks into the tavern and finds Mrs. Coulter, who introduces herself with a little bit of tactical questioning. And then the real questioning begins as the golden monkey pins Lena's demon down. And Coulter wants to know where Lyra is. Mrs. Coulter does a little bit of specter summoning. Yes, another double S. And Lena resists, but eventually she tells Mrs. Coulter that Lyra is Eve. And as we said at the top of the podcast, it's about time that somebody finally said Voldemort's name. Meanwhile, Monkey is not enjoying this experience of specter proximity at all. And after Mrs. Coulter lets the specter feed on Lena's demon, which leaves her, again, cold and numb, Coulter realizes that Lyra has not fallen yet. She is Eve, who has not fallen yet. And she, by golly, is going to prevent it. Because that's what you do. If destiny is to be defeated, you have to defeat her destiny. I don't know. It's all a big question wrapped inside an enigma. But a specter comes back to give the monkey a little hello. Mrs. Coulter tells the monkey to stop whimpering, and she sends the specter away with the shake of her head. So many questions, Holly, but I'll let you go first if you wish.
We never see Mrs. Coulter talk to the monkey, really, do we? I can't, thinking back, I can't remember if she did at all in season 1. I want to say no, but I might be wrong about that. It just tripped me up right there. I was like, she's talking to the monkey, not the witch on the floor, specter left over.
Yeah.
Witch on the floor. So I was a little taken aback. And then in the next scene, especially, I was just like, oh, wow, there's even more. Oh, my goodness. But I'm kind of back on Team Monkey again, so...
Yeah, I felt really bad for the monkey. This left me with a whole lot of questions. I feel like this whole thing with the specter taking the demon instead of going after the witch, that the rules were just bent to allow the witch to be able to not be of any kind of a threat to Mrs. Coulter, because normally witches would just get rid of a Mrs. Coulter. I understand the whole demon pinning thing, but why did the specter have to feed on that? If Mrs. Coulter had the information, why not just let the specter feed on the human body, like it has in every other case? So it felt weird to me that they decided to do that. I'm generally still very confused as to why these specters even bother listening to Mrs. Coulter in general. I do want to pour one out for Lena because she had very few speaking lines in this series, but they turned out to be some of the most important ones in terms of their reveal to Mrs. Coulter. So shout out to that actress whose name eludes me right now, but good job.
What you said about the specter in the witch and the demon, I thought that was strange for me too. Not that the specter was going for the demon. I kind of thought that would be obvious that it would go for the demon because essentially it's kind of the same as what we would see if it went for a human. It's just kind of taking away the essence. So that didn't bother me. But what bothered me was how it was different. So the other spectered humans that we saw were just kind of standing in one spot and like wandering, or kind of just wandering around or standing in one spot and like looking like zombies. But in both cases it seems like, well, especially this case, because the witch is standing when the specter eats the demon and then she falls down like she's dead. So they almost seem like the specters were murdering the witches instead of just taking that part that makes them human.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because they're not human, and maybe that's the difference, that they're witches. And I'd be interesting to see a regular human with a demon and a specter to see how it kind of matches up, if what they do there.
That's true. We haven't seen evidence of that, but we did see a specter take out Raina at the end of the episode, and that one went for the body.
Yeah, and she was already sleeping, so she was already. It's kind of hard to like tell that she didn't go from like standing to falling like this one did.
Yeah.
And do we really? I guess she did go for the body, but maybe the demon was sleeping next to the body, but it didn't have to be. So
No.
I don't know. I didn't see the demon. To answer your other question, maybe the demons are like the best tasting part of people from Lyra's world. And like, I don't know, they got extra dusty seasoning on them, which makes them taste better. Maybe that's why they went for the demon instead of the witch itself.
All right. Well, I'll try not to be as nitpicky as I'm being right now. What else have you got for this scene?
I think just watching my roommate watch this episode, the Lyra is Eve reveal was definitely needed for her. In our book talk last week, we kind of griped about like, oh, why didn't they just say it? Do we really need to say it? It's pretty obvious, but maybe I was wrong about how obvious it was. Or maybe my roommate is just confused as to what that means, which is fair because my first read through, I didn't fully understand what that meant. She was asking me all kinds of questions like, who is the Adam to her Eve? And I was like, well, I didn't answer her, but I was like, well, that seems like obvious to me. You know, she's got a boy with her. But I did remind her of what the angels said Mary's part to play was that she was the serpent. And then she just kind of was like, oh, and then she like sat back and thought.
So one other thing that I guess we should talk about is the fact that Roger was mentioned. And that was, for me, a nice touch to emphasize the way Lyra is increasingly being concerned for Will throughout that scene and her feelings of guilt and basically her determination not to experience that kind of loss again. And of course, it is, I think you added here, it sets up for the ending scene, the special bonus Marvel scene at the end too.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you 100%. Roger did get his fair share of mentions this season, and I'm really glad for it because it does speak a lot to Lyra's motivations and her feelings for Will and as they evolve. So it was nicely done.
Yeah. Well, Lyra and Pan are having their own little powwow discussing leaving the group, and she's Team Yay. Pan's being a little more cautious, as he has been all season, regarding taking big strokes. No decision is made yet because Ruta Scotty returns, although they think that she is a specter at first. But everybody says hi. And then we go back to the Double M's.
Double M's.
The Magisterium Military, because they have landed. But the leader sends this demon out to look for whoever crashed the balloon. And it's not long after that the bird is flying over Lee and Japari, and they are on the move. You go back to the Double R.
Double R?
The Ruta report to Serafina, and she tells him about Azrael's intention to fight the Authority. Ruta wants to get every clan to fight for Azrael, and Serafina's just not having it. She wants to stay with Lyra, because Lyra is going to bring about the end of destiny and the return to free will. And Ruta says that Azrael's going to need the Æsahættr. And Serafina says, well, you go, girl. You go find it. And that's what Ruta does. So is it that Serafina doesn't understand that the Æsahættr is right there under their noses? Or was Serafina just trying to get Ruta out of there or not let Azrael know because she was worried it would interfere with what she has to do with Lyra?
I interpreted it as they didn't know. I don't think Will has referred to the knife by that name, and we know he did hear it called that at least once by Giacomo Paradisi when he got the knife. And just even all of his interactions with Serafina have been very vague about the knife. He hasn't given about too much information, just says like, she says she's frightened and he's like, everybody is. And, I just think they don't know. They just don't realize that they're the same thing.
Right. And the one person who would have no trouble blurting it out to Serafina, he never gets to meet her because of the, he has to sacrifice himself for Will at the end of the episode. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so sad.
I have another question about this scene. And again, these aren't meant to be picks at all, but when you think about the time that it took the Magisterium to land, and you would think that Japari and Lee should have had a little bit of a head start. And I know that a bird demon can fly up high and can see things, but this looked like the bird was flying right over them. And I'm just thinking, does this soldier have a high tolerance range the same way like a Mrs. Coulter would, or has some other process occurred, or is it just that Lee and Japari are just slow? Are they the kind of like Route 66 travelers that they'll have a 10-day vacation and they'll spend 7 days getting there because they stop in every little shop on the way. They spend 1 day at the beach and then they have to double time it to get back in time.
I guess, I don't know. I think so many emotions in this episode. I just think I let my brain take the easy way out in these situations. So I didn't really interpret that the demon was like super far ahead of the soldier. Maybe just higher than a regular demon could go. I don't know. It may not be that at all. It could have been just that maybe Lee and John Perry took a little bit of time after they crashed.
It takes a long time to gather 30 slugs, I'm telling you.
I mean, maybe they were a little bit beat up after crashing. They had to like get themselves together, wait for their bodies to stop hurting a little bit, raid what's in the balloon for any supplies they might need, food, bags, travel things, hand sanitizer, all the stuff you need out in the mountainy jungle.
Okay.
I don't know. I will say I liked that demon. I like that idea of the demon being the hawk or the eagle, kind of as a scout. It's a cool use of how demons settle in a way that really suits like a human's career in a lot of cases in Lyra's world. I just imagine this guy was just really into scouting stuff like his whole life. I liked it.
Cool.
It was not a dog, it was, or a wolf or something like that could take down for fighting. And it's a pretty strategic use of a demon. So I guess this is one of my bigger nits to pick. It stood out to me in the episode as I was watching it. So Ruta comes back to meet Serafina. She's like, "Oh, I just got back from meeting Asriel," and then she has to go back and talk to Asriel again. So we haven't seen Ruta since she left to see Asriel. Then now she's back from seeing Asriel, and she's got to go back and see him one more time. And it just felt a little weird, like we were missing an entire episode or something. I don't know.
It does. Yeah, of course, if we had that Asriel episode, it wouldn't have seemed weird at all, I don't suppose, other than just the fact, why didn't Ruta say, "Oh, man, I just got here. You want me to go back?" But other than that, I can see how that would stick out more, especially with that missing episode.
Yeah. R.I.P. missing episode.
R.I.P. missing episode. Well, speaking of Japari and Lee, they must have lingered at that gift store too long because the Magisterium has caught up. And Japari and Lee see the military demon, and they decide, well, maybe we better get to the beach a little quicker than we thought. And it's too late. Shots are starting to come at him. Lee gets hit in the ankle. He tells Japari to run, and he'll cover the man. And Lee does manage to hit enough of the double limbs that he is able to get away himself and follow Japari. And the double limbs are, of course, the Magisterium military. Mrs. Coulter needs to do another Spectre summoning to help find Lyra, but she is forced to have a sidebar with her monkey demon. Absolutism shows up as it becomes a "you're either for me or against me" moment, and we see the intricacies, I believe, of an abusive relationship. First she kicks the monkey, and then she starts comforting the monkey. And the monkey is frightened of specters, of Lyra, but Mrs. Coulter must prevent the fall, no matter what the cost. And she climbs to the top of the tower, and she just completely ignores Paradisi's body, walks right past it, out to the broken window there, and calls on all of the specters to join her in the search.
That's a triple S.
Triple S?
Spectre synchronized swimming.
So, one thing that I didn't mention in the last scene with Mrs. Coulter, when she was letting the Spectre have a little fun with the monkey, it almost seemed like there was a moment on her face where she wished that the monkey would become a meal. And, of course, we know what that would mean for her, and, of course, she wouldn't do it, I wouldn't think, if she's truly concerned about Lyra, because she has to keep going in order to concern Lyra, unless she feels like that she can continue to function without the monkey.
Wow.
That was a little weird. But then we get in
dark.
Yeah,
so
very dark. Because again, all of this abuse stuff about Mrs. Coulter comes out again. And I am not a psychologist, so do not take my word for it. But these are the way these kinds of abusive relationships are portrayed on television shows. I feel like this one very well, but letting a specter terrify the crap out of her demon and her abuse overall, I mean, I'm firmly Team Monkey also right now. And then that whole deal of her just getting down into almost a very similar position, but at least making herself down on the monkey's level. And again, I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not any kind of person who deals with this kind of stuff, so I'm probably talking way out of turn. But I could just see this kind of abuse of, actual physical abuse, and then this kind of trying to make up for it by feeling like you're empathizing with your victim. I could just see this happening to all kinds of domestic abuse victims, any kind of abuse victims. It's just awful for me to think about. It was very gutting for me to see that scene.
I agree. I feel exactly the same way as you. It's a really hard scene to watch, and I'm not a psychologist either, but it does just really seem to fit that abusive MO, hurt them and then comfort them after hurting them, which makes all the feelings so much more confusing. It's really, really rough stuff to watch here. I don't like to think about it too much either. And it's also, she touches him, right? She lets his head rest in her hand, and and that's already right there. Like they almost never touch. This is only like the second time we've seen them touch, I think, in the whole series, and it's really sad. It's just
yeah. So it's just totally uncomfortable to talk about.
On a different note, for going back to Lee and John Perry, when they're looking up, I'm waiting for them to say, "That's no demon." Just another Star Wars callback. But I just feel like I was expecting that line, since we kind of keep meshing this with this show with the Star Wars universe in our coverage. So apologies. Star Wars is on top of our brains.
I'll tell you what else was on top of my brain as soon as Lee got hit in the ankle.
Here we go.
I mean, it's the beginning of the end, and it's really hard to watch some of this play out. Even when you know that it's coming, and both of us did know that it was coming, but it's just like, oh. And I actually had wondered when he said, "Go on, I'll cover you." I wondered if that was going to be the Alamo stand right there. But fortunately, we got a little bit further along before that started to happen.
There were so many rocks, and there were so many boulders that climbed behind. I was like, "Is this it? Is this it? Is this it?" Ugh.
Yeah,
that's rough.
Yeah. It felt like sometimes it felt like it was just the same set, just redressed a little differently.
Yeah, I actually, when they got to the third rock, I was like, "Isn't that the first rock?" I don't know. I thought they really just used that one over again, but that's okay. It all the tears I shed, it didn't even matter.
Yeah, one thing's for sure, bees are not good for characters in this show for season 2. If you're tied to a balloon, or if your name's Boreal, you don't have much of a chance in this season, that's for sure.
No.
Japari faces the reality that they're not going to outrun the military, and Lee says that he will stay behind so that Japari can get to the knife bearer. He makes Japari promise once again that knife is going to be used to protect Lyra, and Japari calls Lee a good man, and they part ways. Lyra, back at Camp Witch, is telling Pan that she's changing, and that once she does, he'll stop changing. Her demon will settle. Pan thinks that maybe being a flea would be a good idea as a final form. They determined that Will is part of the reason that she's changing. Not exactly biologically accurate, but understood. And Pan's not ready, and Lyra doesn't think that anyone is.
She's right about that.
Yeah. Mary Malone is ready to do some eaching, though. And those flower petals show up again as she says stuff about foxtails and what have you. Fox crosses a stream and then it sees its tail. And I guess that's related to the flower petals suddenly blowing back up for sure. But the second part seems pretty easy to translate, about the whole bit about dangers and everything. It's like, look out. But I still don't have any clue how this is going to get Mary anywhere, what she's even doing there at the moment. The angels have not done a very good job of laying out the plan, although maybe Mary knows the I Ching better than I do. So it's just like we've heard mountains, check. Fox crosses, sees its tail. Okay, there's the petals again, check. Searching for things in at the tower, she said, searching for things like you're ravenous and hunger or something to that effect. Is Mary just not looking around closely enough? Is that what's going on here?
If I had to be following directions from the I Ching, I would never make it to where I was going. So I am the last person to ask. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'm not very good with written directions myself. So there you go. I'm sure that TV people by now could guess what Lee's fate was. But one of the things that I really admired about that scene with Lin-Manuel and Andrew Scott and the writing was how just frank that the dialogue was. And they even spice it up with a little bit of hope with the "I'm a good shot" line, which I loved. But the thing that really got me most was the score that Lauren Balfe put underneath that. We'll talk about that some in the music section. I do want to give Andrew Scott some extra credit because there were a lot of layers in that acting performance. You know, his gratitude for being that Lee had got him there, and almost a sense that he knew as much as us book readers knew what was going to happen. That felt very real and very difficult for me.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think that's the first time he shows in the episode that he knows something's going to happen. And but we'll get to the second part later. Yeah, man, I don't know. I can't with this Lee stuff right now. It's about to just get even worse. But it was a beautiful little goodbye scene. I appreciated Lee reminding John Perry about the promise
that he doesn't keep.
Which also made me think, promise me, Ned. It just, I couldn't help it. I was like, oh my God, there's so much, just so many emotions. But you're right. You're spot on about his performance. Both of their performances in that scene. Lee didn't even hesitate to say, okay, I'm staying, you're going. Like, just heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about the Lyra scene, what I kept thinking of is how you and I've had conversations for the last 2 seasons about how Philip Pullman's been telling kids the whole time, don't grow up. Your demon won't be able to change anymore. And now this season has been, the specters will get you. But those kind of things are just like death and taxes. They're unavoidable. I did love how it's still put in the perspective of Lyra and Pan's conversation about that uncertainty about growing up. I thought that was really done well. I feel like that's what this whole trilogy is about as much as anything, that, it's going to happen, but it's okay to feel weird about it as it happens. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, you're spot on there. Good job, Matt. Well, I don't have anything better than that to add, so.
Well, then we'll move on to Lee's pistol has now run out of bullets, and he and Hester move to yet another rock cropping. There's they dress the set again. Redress the set for shot 3. Hester has to do a little double A.
Double A.
Ammunition analytics in order to determine that there's only 30 bullets left. And Lee vows that he's going to make them count. Hester helps Lee aim at targets and to think about bacon, which is very important when you're making targets. But a bullet does graze Lee's head. to quote the old Monty Python movie, "'Tis but a flesh wound," Hester says. And now Hester is feeling guilty about the fact that she feels like that this is her fault. She didn't stop Lee. Lee's not having it. He says, "You've always pushed me, and that's what I wanted you to do." They've made good choices together, and Lee is still doing pretty good for a minute. And then he gets hit in the arm where he can't really hold his rifle really well. Hester says, use the Force, since we're doing Star Wars references. Or what I really mean is use that cloud pine that Serafina gave you back in episode 1. Use it and hope that it'll work. Hope that Serafina can hear you. Serafina does feel Lee calling to her as we go back to her and Lyra and the gang. She tells Lyra what's happening, and Lyra is instantly, once again, reverting back to those thoughts about how she's responsible for all of these people, terrible things happening to them. She begs Serafina to go and save Lee, and that they will stay put while she does so. So Serafina jets off looking for Lee. Unfortunately, this is the Alamo last stand moment for Lee. He says to Hester, "We flew so far." And in their last moment, Hester says that they did their job. They held off the Magisterium, and they helped Lyra. And Lee's last act as a living person is for a teardrop to fall from his eye, and then Hester disappears.
Man.
Let's start off with something not quite as morbid or as depressing as that set, and just give a shout out to Michael VK. That's at Michael VEEKAY1. He works on the show. He designed the Winchester rifle and the scope, or he had part to do with that. Maybe not the design, but the creation of them. And here's what he said about it. There's an homage to Han Solo's, like we haven't talked about Star Wars enough. There's an homage to Han Solo's DL-44 blaster in there, if you know what you're looking for. Worked together with a wonderful Paradex R to bring this to screen. So awesome.
We're all on the same page.
we're all on the same page here.
Oh man. I have another light moment before we get really sad is what they say, like, oh, it's just like, remember when we were kids and we played the Alamo, being the Danes and the French, and it's just like another funny little callback to how their world is so different than ours.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the Danes and the French were involved in our Alamo, so it's just interesting. I was like, man, I was thinking about how that would have looked. It's so weird.
Well, if you look at a map, any of the maps of from Philip Pullman's book, Texas is pretty much just the United States. I mean, Lee could actually be from what we call Montana, for that matter, right?
So instead of the Louisiana Purchase, it was like the Texas Purchase, or is it even bigger than that?
Well, it's weird because the New France is Canada.
Okay, that actually makes sense, though.
Yeah, and Texas is essentially most of the U.S. It's most of the it's the southern half of North America. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty cool. We'll give a shout out to Ritagazzi, who does a little Twitter publishing thing. That's at Demons and Dust with 2 T's. They have been doing little quizzes on their Twitter. And I was forced to look at some things to try and figure out where the heck how this world is laid out. So, yeah, awesome.
Let's get sad.
Let's get sad. I mean, Jesus, that hurt. That really, really hurt. I think the thing that got me, well, there were 2 things that really got me. Hester's guilt, because it's part of the grieving process. You just, when you lose somebody, or as you're losing somebody, it's always you're questioning, what could I have done differently? All of these kinds of things. And then Lee also saying, "Don't you leave before me," and just such a tribute to their relationship and how the last thing he would ever want to see is losing that part of himself and still being able to realize that he was losing that part of himself. That's one of the worst feelings that you can have when you're sitting with someone and they're going away. It really is.
I'm crying. I'm crying right now. I apologize, listeners. Yeah, the tears for me, it was, she was feeling guilty, but the tears really started for me when he said, Hester, there were always adventures. And I just broke at that moment, and it didn't stop throughout this whole scene. I do love, once again, that we get to see Hester kind of helping Lee, telling him where to shoot, and he is a good shot. He didn't miss, like, at all. Any shot he fired, I don't think he missed in this part. And then agree, the next line was about, don't you leave before me. It also really, really got to me. That's when my sobs were the loudest. And I gotta say, I'm really glad we didn't see Hester fizzle out, because I don't think I could have taken it. I think I would have had to turn off the episode and go lie down, and maybe not even finish if we saw Hester fizzle out. I just thought that was very tastefully done. We didn't need to see it. It was hurting so much already. That's the only time we don't see a demon fizzle out with a death. So I'm really glad it's not focused on her like it is later when we see John Perry and Sion Couture. We watch her go.
Yeah, that's true.
This was very different, but like I said, I'm glad it wasn't focused on that, because I couldn't have handled it. So good job, show. Thank you for sparing me a little bit anyway than what I was already. Oh man.
Group therapy, that's what we need, Holly. We really
Sorry.
do. We're both in the same spot. So let's stick to someone who is still doing his job right now, and that's Will. Because even when he's asleep, he's constantly working. Hot Shaman is giving him some visual GPS directions in his sleep, and Will does the thing. He sneaks away from Lyra and Reyna, and the Magisterium is still on Japari's trail. Mrs. Coulter has her specters, her own kind of army looking for Lyra. All of it's edited in a way that makes you think, or made me think. I thought, oh, are we going to get something different here? Because it looked like Will and Mrs. Coulter were going to run into each other instead of Will running into his dad. That wasn't the case, but I was misled by it for a second. And then Will gets a little defensive at first, but then he recognizes his dad, and it doesn't take long for Dad to put two and two together. I mean, it's pretty fast for someone who hasn't seen their son in a very long time, and Will's probably grown up a lot, but sorry for that nitpick. There are some daddy issues to work out here, but first we got to get to the mommy dearest issues. Coulter finds Lyra sleeping while her specter has a double D.
A double D?
A dust dinner.
Oh.
On poor old Reyna. Thank you, Sasha Frost, for your performance. And both Will and Japari are asking questions. They're getting some answers. Some of those answers are accepted, some not so much. But Japari emphasizes the importance of being the knife bearer, that the authority must be destroyed. Oh, there's the mission, the complete mission, finally. And Will adds the caveat of, well, but then we're going to go home, right? And Japari promises. Will still doesn't want this deal. He's only ever wanted his dad. And Japari says to look at what Will has become without his dad, without him. That's when the Double M, the military man, comes into the ravine, draws his weapon. Japari turns around real quick to protect Will from the shot. It ends up hitting him. Sion Couture is really mad and commits Double M.
Double M?
Magisterium murder by doing a little double D.
Double D.
Demon destruction.
Mm-hmm.
But it's too late. Japari's last words to Will are that the angels will guide him. Whew. This one had almost as many feels for me as the Lee scene did. I think I was a little more invested in Lee just because he'd been with us longer. But the reality of not having those daddy issues resolved with a hug, but then the importance of Will, you can just see it in the rest of the episode. Any shot of Will the importance of him taking up that mantle, just like his mom said he would, after him seeing his father take that shot in order to save his life. But I do have a question. The man who turned to protect Will, of course, he was Japari the shaman, and he was Will's father. But which was he more? What was he thinking more? Was he a father protecting his son? Or was he a shaman protecting the future? And I don't think that we're supposed to answer that it's equal parts. And I just want to ask our listeners right now, which do you think it was? More of a father? Or was he thinking about the good of all? And in a way being a father because he's thinking about, what that will mean for his son in the future. But Holly, what do you think?
I think kind of equal parts, honestly.
That's the one thing I didn't want anybody to say.
Sorry, but it's true.
What else have we got on this here?
This scene with Will and John Perry, it was more than what I wanted, and I ate it all up. Once again, the adaptive changes they made improve the story versus what they did in the book, and they've done a consistent job with this all season. I'm really, really glad we had this scene. Great job, writers. All those, if you've been listening to our book section, I was asking a lot of dumb questions about who was going to kill John Perry, because it's not really a spoiler now, but in the book, it's a witch that kills him. It's a witch that John Perry had spurned, and she was upset about it. So she shot him with an arrow. And not only that, but in the books, she shot and killed him with an arrow right at the very moment that Will and John Perry realized that they're looking at each other as father and son. So, up until that moment, they didn't even know, which makes it incredibly sad in the books. But man, so I was asking these dumb questions all season, okay, they haven't established this witch who was spurned by John Perry. Who's going to do it? Who's going to kill him? Who is it? Who is it going to be? It better not be Mrs. Coulter. She has nothing to do with this. So, you know what? None of that even matters anymore. I'm glad it was just some soldier that did it, because in this adaptation, we get, not only they get to realize who they are, but they actually get to have a conversation with each other, get to answer at least some of those questions that each other have. And Will, asking his father about where he was and why he didn't come back, and getting John Perry's explanation as to why. And then the promise that maybe when all of this is over, they get to go back home. Will's fantasy, his childhood fantasy, is about to come true once they complete their mission. And then moments later, it's just taken away. And that is even more sad than what they did in the book. And I'm just like, oh my God. It's so much better. Earlier, we were talking about Andrew Scott's performance as he's telling Lee goodbye, and it's like he knew more about what was going to happen and than he was willing to say. And the moment when Will asks if they can go home, and he drops his head and shakes it, but when he's picking it back up, he starts nodding and looking at Will and looking into Will's eyes. I'm just like, oh man, he knows. He knows in this moment that that's never gonna happen, and it's so sad. Oh my God!
Wow, I did that. I took that totally differently. I'm glad that we talked about this, because that was the performance. I was saying the incredulous nature is just you have no idea that this is what I've always wanted. I didn't even think about him knowing that it was going to be the end for him. I didn't even think about that. Wow. Okay. Because I was just thinking Andrew Scott, just being so relieved at hearing his son say that. And on top of that, in the writing, now that I've thought of it, the first question, once he realizes that Will is his son, is about his wife.
Oh.
Where is she? Is she okay? Where is she? Because he didn't want her anywhere near there. And that even points more to what you were in terms of your interpretation. He didn't want her anywhere near what was about to happen. So.
Oh my God. Wow. This might be our best podcast moment ever, Matthew. The revelations we just had. Yeah. Amazing.
See, if I hadn't interpreted wrongly.
No, I don't think you interpreted it wrong. Actually, I like your interpretation too. I think they kind of weirdly fit well together.
Very good. Anything else about this? Do we want to talk about the demon here?
Yeah, I was. This is a small gripe that I had, and it was the second watch that I realized. I was like, oh my God, Phoebe Waller-Bridge didn't get any lines this episode. And then on my second watch, all she does is she calls out Joffrey right before he gets the shooting happens, and that's it. And then I loved her just flying down, getting to that hawk or eagle or whatever, and snapping its neck, and then the soldier is dead. Oh, that was just it was so badass. And it's been a while, I think, since we've seen a demon kill another demon, and by way killing the human. So, but what a way to go out, Sion Couture. Good job. Do regret that Phoebe Waller-Bridge did not have more lines in this series. Very sad about that.
Yeah.
Please go watch Fleabag, and when you get to season 2, you will thank me.
Well, we've got to wrap this thing up. We'll start with this montage of scenes with Serafina finding Lee's body. Very sad. She gives him a kiss on the forehead and starts saying a witch prayer over him, I suppose. And then Will sees his father's jacket and grabs it. I suppose that he's buried his father, but he left the jacket off, and he inspects his wounds on his fingers as well. We see Serafina flying back through the air, and I am assuming she's not trying to fly back to Lyra, but maybe I could be wrong about that. But our next shot is Yorick Bernenson, and he is watching his whole world melt away, even more so than when he was talking to Kaisa before. And then we have a shot of Mary. She's still searching for something. She's near a waterfall, and we have Mrs. Coulter on a boat, and she's doing some double C.
Double C.
Case caressing. And magisterium ships are flying around, and we see Cardinal McPhail, looking very determined. And finally, in this final shot of this montage, we see Will putting his father's jacket on and then walking towards the sun. It's a very heroic slow-mo shot.
It's a Jedi moment, too.
It's a Jedi moment as well, though there are not two suns. It's just one.
Huh.
But during all of that sequence, Azrael's voice is heard. What? And here is what Azrael says. I have struggled through many worlds to arrive here, but you know this. I have sacrificed things I did not want to. My fight is not with you, but you are the last obstacle between me and my enemy, and if I must, I will raise arms. My fight is with the authority, and those doling out cruelties in his name. Those who seek to divide in order to control, and who have built worlds founded on privilege and divine right, rather than care and need. I fight for freedom of knowledge, and in place of deceit, intolerance, and prejudice. I fight for the possibilities of understanding truths and acceptance, but I cannot win these things alone. And then his voice changes a little bit because that's like a very studio over the TV monologue kind of thing from a narrator. We hear the surroundings of him change a little bit. It sounds a little like he's in a much bigger space, and he says, I will need your help and support. I will need help and support from all those who have rebelled. And then we see Azrael, and as he continues to make his plea to the skies, he seems like he's in this very strange world, and he wants an alliance and to build a new republic of heaven above and a new world of ideas below. And he says, there's no neutral ground. This sounds familiar. You are either for me or against me. Yeah, that sounds real familiar. And after demanding an answer, Stelmaria's eyes widen and she alerts Azrael that they've been heard. because angels drop down from high above in the skies to a level where we can see them in great streaks of white and flashes, and they say that they are with him. And he says it's time to prepare for war. We've got one more scene before the credits, and that's in the final scene of Mrs. Coulter here before those credits. She shows her true love for her daughter by finally opening the case and letting the poor girl who's sleeping get some fresh air. She lovingly tells the sleeping Lyra that she's out of danger now, and they will go somewhere entirely safe. And then shows her exactly what she means by closing the case again. You got your air, go back to sleep. I just hope, Holly, that whatever Stewart helped her with that bag to get on that ship got a very generous tip.
Poor guy.
It's just awful. It's better than thinking of Mrs. Coulter lugging that thing around, though. That's for sure.
This thing weighs like a 13-year-old. What's going on here?
Yeah. Also, are you really safe if you only get 30 seconds of fresh air and then that case gets closed back on you? Have you ever seen that movie Buried?
I have not.
Oh my gosh. My friend Heath Solo had a speaking voice in that movie. It was one of the voices, the last voices that you hear in that movie, or he was supposed to be. I think his vocal got cut at the last minute before the release.
Poor Heath.
But he did a little speaking part in that, and I can tell you that when you see Ryan go through all of the struggles of being in that little box and there not being much air, I can't imagine, as small as that bag is that they've stuffed Lyra into, that she has any fresh air for any amount of time. It's awful.
There's like straws poking out of the side of the suitcase.
I hope she's got some holes in it. Yeah.
Some crazy straws connecting her mouth to the outside of the suitcase. I don't know. Poor thing. I don't want to think about it.
You just got to love them till it kills them. Not till it kills you, till it kills them. That's what you got to do. And also, one final question about this with Mrs. Coulter. Is this a new level of human trafficking that we've never seen before?
Oh, my God. Your own child trafficking.
Yeah.
I like this montage a lot. I thought it was beautifully done. I'm really glad that you had the speech and everything kind of like typed up in these notes, because before recording this podcast, I'm just so overcome with emotion that I barely process these scenes and these words. And they're coming. It felt like it just came really fast. And I knew, I was like, oh man, all I could pick up was just Asriel's impassioned words. So it's nice to have, and it was just hard to process the deluge of imagery and the words at the same time. So thank you, Matt, for doing this podcast with me so I could process that whole bit better, because I just could not.
Well, I did like the montage as well. There wasn't a single thing that I didn't love about it, but the one part of it that really stuck out for me was Serafina finding Lee and the care that she gave him for that. So that was a wonderful thing. And I also noticed that Asriel's got a lot more gray on him than he had before. I would imagine his travels have been tough if he's taken all this time just to get the angels to a place where they'll listen to him.
Yeah.
And it was a good speech. But the thing that I took most away from that speech, TV only people, he says, from those who have rebelled, in his speech. Rebelled is a past tense. So the angels have rebelled before? Should we be thinking about that for next season? And that's the end, right? I mean, we're done. That's all there is. End credits. A very nice, different piece of music from Lauren Balfe underneath there. The Eve of War is what that's entitled on the Series 2 official soundtrack. Oh, wait a minute. You did stick around all the way to the end, didn't you, folks? You didn't let HBO try to automatically skip you off, did you? I hope you didn't, because there's one more scene. The credits end, there's blackness, and we hear a voice. Lyra, help me. All of a sudden, the lights come up and dun, 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 it's Roger. Wait, Roger? And even Lyra, we hear her voice and she says, Roger? What is this place? Where are they? What are they doing? I actually want to point this out. One of the Lyras that Roger said, I'm pretty sure, is something that was used in the very first
Oh, yeah.
episode when she was dreaming.
I already forgot about that. That's, oh, man. Ugh, my heart. Oh, Roger, I wasn't expecting this. Chloe had reached out to us the day that the episode was released, and if she wouldn't have said the end credits, I would have missed it completely. So thank you, Chloe, for cluing me in on that. I was not disappointed, and I just almost started crying all over again. This episode is too much. Oh my God. Oh, so heartbreaking. Oh man.
So we're going to have to wait until probably 2022 for TV-only people to figure out what the heck's going on with Roger. Not to be even more depressing. Let's see. Let's stack all the depressions up for you. Let's see. Lee's dead. Jean-Pierre's dead. Roger's who knows where. Mrs. Coulter has Lyra in a case, lovingly.
And everyone is sad.
Everyone is sad. And Will's got a new jacket.
And we like the monkey now. What is going on?
The world has been turned upside down. Nothing makes sense anymore.
Matt, you did not just say the world turned upside down. Oh, God. Okay, Battle of Yorktown. Come on. You watched Hamilton, right?
Yeah.
Damn it. Yeah. Oh, you're killing me. You're killing me.
It wasn't intentional.
Ugh.
Okay, maybe it was a little intentional. You know what? Nothing stacks onto depression like trying to come up with 3 words for this episode. Here we go. This is where you try to describe the episode in 3 words. You don't have to describe the entire episode in 3 words, although if you want to try that, you can feel free. We accept any form of 3 words, just as long as there's only 3 of them, and we can say them, like on the radio. Otherwise, we got to do some bleeping. But, Holly, because you love this game so much, I am going to make you give your 3 words first.
For lack of a better 3 words, I just went with rest in peace. And that's, like you just alluded to, Hot Shaman, Scion Couture, Lee Scoresby, Hester, Witches.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant thought. There's a high death count on this one. Not quite as many as your average stormtrooper scene in The Mandalorian, but close. And my 3 words this time are a triple U. Triple U? Ultimatums underscored, because it's the ultimate episode for this season. Ultimatums, which were made for me or against me, and it happens not once but twice. And I can't decide who's for me or against me is worse. We'll figure that out shortly, maybe. Here we go with some submissions that we got from our friends in the UK who got to see this episode a full week before you did. So they've been sitting on these 3 words for a while. Our friend Elena, who is at Gorgavan R, says witches, shaman, suitcase. Excellent. Our friend Candid59, who I believe was the first person to ever leave us a review on iTunes. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Says their 3 words are screaming and crying. By the way, I think Candid59 is actually appearing with Girls Gone Canon for their review of this episode. Oh, cool. Looking forward to that. Yeah. Christina, who is at Chris1989Jean, says, I don't want to give anything away, but my 3 words are excellent, emotional, exciting. That's a triple E. And Kat, yeah, right on. Way to stay in the game here with this double P podcast. Catherine, who is at Catherine with a Y, MSH, says, long live Hester. Yeah. That one hurts. Our friend Holly, who's given us great feedback all season, at HTracy084 says, their 3 words, I'm so exhausted. Those are my 3 words about the finale. I need a drink and a nap.
I felt the same way.
As do we all. We do. Again, a great person who works on the show, and I thank him for the rifle that Lee Scoresby wielded. His 3 words, back to work, with a bunch of question marks.
I don't like those question marks. I don't like them.
Yeah. Well,
you're going back to work, sir. You are going back to work.
At Dr. Doggo. That's Natalie. Love that.
Are you a veterinarian, Natalie? Dr. Natalie?
Dr. Natalie. Dr. Doggo. I love it. Natalie says, I wasn't ready. How could anybody be ready for that? What an episode. Incredible. Megsy, who is at Scoops
Ahoy.
Oh,
Robin.
Scoops Ahoy Robin. At Scoops Ahoy Robin. Thank you, Holly. Incredible and emotional. Excellent. At Swords_drawn says walk through canyon. At Alexandra XXY says heartbreaking, beautiful, gripping. At Saja D's says, that's with 2 E's and a Z, says something bleepin' special. At Ruth Smedley 2, thank you very much for your 3 words, Ruth. Brave, heartbreaking, and determined. At Alan_McElwraith, Alan says powerful, brave, perfect. Excellent. Then we have at Cam CHZ says power, emotion, war. At what else with all? See, you're such an animal person, Holly. All of these people who have that are veterinarians are now submitting 3 words to us. Katie, who is at Traveling Vet 42. That sounds like a cool job, being a traveling vet. Yeah. Call to arms. Excellent. Amet, who is at Amet Farrock K06. Heartbreak, love, war. Our friend Narissa, who is at Narissa_Suku, says 3 words would be prepare for battle.
Nice.
And then at One Dart Lou, who is another person who is very early in giving us a review on iTunes, I believe. Louise.
Louise is a double L.
A double L?
A loyal listener.
Oh, that she is. She's also a double L.
A double L?
A Louise listener. She gave the best set for me. I love this too. I love this. Whole, spelled HOLE -Lee LEE -Hester. Holy Hester. That Louise
wins 3 words for the whole season. Good job.
Yeah, that was awesome, Louise. Thank you so much. Again, that's at One Dart Lou on Twitter. Just one little bit of feedback came in. We were tagged in a photo, and it was to several people, but this is what Dean said, who is at Dean Kelly Art. All of the season was wonderful. Loved this continuing adaptation. Edgy, canny, just polished enough, fantastic, spirited, and spiritual. Impeccably produced, and so perfect an achievement in acting that the previous Hollywood manifestation has turned to dust.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Shots fired.
Yeah, shots fired. If you're not into that movie, if you have disagreements with this, with the movie version that came out, Dean's your guy. Dean is your guy. And we're going to play Holly's now least favorite game, What's Worse, next. All right, it's time to play that game that everybody loves except for Holly. And that is a game where we ask what in the episode was worse, and whoever is answering gets to choose between the 2 choices and argue that. Whoever asked the question is stuck arguing the other side passionately. They're not allowed to not argue it passionately. But you'll find that I argue everything passionately, most of the time to my detriment. That's the way the game works. There can never be an agreement. We just leave it up for you to the polls, for you listeners to decide. You'll find these polls pinned to our profile page on Twitter. Just look through the whole thread. All of the polls will be there by the time you're hearing this. Holly, you or me first?
You go first.
All right, because mine's a doozy. What's worse? Asking Holly to do a what's worse? Or having to live the result of her actually complying?
God. Ouch. Man, because that's how good I've been this season. Okay, mine is having a bad what's worse for the podcast, or Matt firing me from the podcast for not having come up with one.
So fired. So very fired.
These are polls, by the way. You got to put that one in the poll.
These are both will be on the same poll, and you'll just have to pick one of the 4 answers. No, we'll figure it out. Let's see. Okay, here's my serious one. And folks, vote on the poll, and I will be paying attention to see if I win. And if not, then I might have a Twitter rant. I don't know. But what's worse, kicking your demon or sticking your daughter in a suitcase, Holly?
I'm going to say kicking your demon is worse because you're just inflicting emotional damage upon yourself. I know you're going to argue that sticking a child in a suitcase is worse, but I think when you look at her reasons, she's trying to keep her safe. I think in this situation, I'm correct. Kicking your demon is way worse. Too much self-harm. That's it. I don't have any more words. I'm too emotionally exhausted from this whole episode to even think of any more. So,
well, Holly, I really appreciate that argument, but you're completely wrong.
Okay, of course.
First of all, if you're a person who's kicking your demon, if you consider you've already tried to feed them to the specters and then backed out at the last minute. So kicking a demon is not really anything at all to this person. On the other hand, sticking your daughter in a suitcase, if you truly are trying to take care of this person, I don't think that's the way to do it. I think that's abuse on someone else besides yourself, because any of these other forms of demon abuse are, as you said, abuse of yourself, but abuse on others is never, well, no abuse is acceptable, but abuse on your own daughter, it just reeks of being worse to me.
But it's for the greater good. It's for Lyra's safety. So it's not great in this moment, but ultimately it's she wants to keep her safe. There's no keeping yourself safe when you abuse your own demon.
You keep yourself safe by asphyxiating your daughter. Yes, that's a very good argument, Holly. I appreciate that.
I'm telling you, there's straws. She's got crazy straws that poke out the suitcase. She can breathe just fine.
I was inspecting that suitcase for holes. I saw none.
You didn't see what I saw.
Well, all I can say is maybe those locks, maybe there's a little bit of air getting in through where the latches are. That's about it.
Right. I already regret my what's worse, because I don't want to argue either side. So, but here we go. Here we are. It's the last one. What's worse? Losing your father, or realizing you lost your best friend because she was kidnapped right after you lost your father?
Ooh. Well, by my book, 1 + 1 = 2, but 1 + 0 = 1. So therefore, losing your father must be worse.
Wow. Okay.
See what I did there with the math?
Yeah, I was like, wow, your math is finally adding up, but then in the end, it didn't. So.
No, it went the exact opposite way, because that's how I do math around here, folks. You don't want me calculating what kind of distance you need to be away from the radiation. All right, tell me why losing your best friend is better.
It's not better. They're both terrible. It's awful. Worse. I think it's worse that he lost his best friend because he's dealing with grief from losing his father and then guilt from not being there to protect his best friend.
Guilt and worry. You know what? I think you won this one. But we'll put it on the poll anyway, folks. Vote on those on the poll. Again, you'll find those in a big thread pinned to our profile page right after this episode airs. Music analysis time. And I'm going to steal your 3 words, and I'm going to say rest in peace, Lee Scoresby. We're going to look at some of the great orchestrations of his theme this season. Hey, if you're not into the musical analysis, just skip ahead 14 minutes. Or if you're on YouTube with us with the double P, Hang around just a couple seconds. We'll be right back. All right, here we go. We're at the end of a season. We're at the end of a TV-only part of a podcast. We will have some book reader stuff for you folks after the end music. If you don't want to be spoiled about anything that might potentially happen in Season 3, then I would suggest you avoid it. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to join us on the other side. Don't forget, you have until December 30th. That's just a couple short days away to submit your 3 words for any episode of His Dark Materials in order to be included in our contest. If you win our contest, you're going to get a copy of all of Holly's books. You're going to get her books.
No.
Okay, you're going to get if you win, you'll get a copy of Once Upon a Time in the North, the Philip Pullman book that tells Lee Scoresby's story when he was younger and how he met Yorick Bernenson. All kinds of cool stuff in that. It's beautifully illustrated by John Lawrence. You'll also win all of Holly's Philip Pullman books, every single last one of them. No? Okay. You get a copy of Lauren Balfe's Season 2 official television soundtrack. I said that twice, Holly, to try and incite even another response, because you know how forgetful I can be. The old the elephant over here. Now I don't even get a response. She won't even dignify it with a response.
Look, I'll just say, you don't want my copy of the book trilogy because none of them match up. You know how people like maybe not everybody, but some people, they want their sets, like they have maybe their Harry Potter collection is all hardcover or all paperback. Okay, well, mine are all paperback, but none of them match. Like, it's not a matching set. I bought them at different times from different places, and they just look completely different. If you look at them on a shelf, you can't tell that they are all part of a trilogy. Don't know if you want that aesthetic on your bookshelf. Just throwing that out there to try to discourage you from wanting and trying to take my books.
An aesthetic you will want, because you're going to win this as well, is Lauren Balfe's Season 2 official television soundtrack in the format that you choose. If you want DVD, I don't know if they do that. If you want CD...
Do they still do that? Just kidding.
If you want a hard copy of this sucker so that you can put it on your bookshelf the same way that Holly displays her books, you can get that. Or if you just want the MP3s to have on your phone, we'll get you that. All of this is on me. And you can proudly wear a T-shirt from the official merch store, which we will purchase for you, that you get to pick out. We'll send you to the website. You pick it out, and then just give us the information as to what we need so that it'll fit you. But we will get it for you, and that's your grand prize. Oh, one other thing. You'll get a Zoom meetup with me and Holly, and you'll also get that if you win our runner-up prize, which is the kind of second place. It's the same things that you win in the grand prize, except you won't get the copy of Once Upon a Time in the North, or you won't get the T-shirt, but you will still get Holly's books. So don't ask me how I'm going to do that. Sending Holly's books to 2 different winners.
We don't live in the same state, our listeners. We live several states apart, so I'm very interested to see in how this will work out.
Yeah, we're roughly 700 miles apart and 1,100 kilometers, whichever way you want to look at it, a little over 1,100 kilometers. So it's going to be tough, but I will get myself a knife, cut through to her house, steal them, get back out. I don't have any problem with using things for base purposes at all.
I knew I shouldn't have gave you my address.
Mm-hmm. I would have found it eventually. It would have taken me like 11 years or something like that. Anyway, we'll announce our winners on January 5th in our wrap-up season podcast, and we will be recording that just a day before. And you will have the winner, and then you will contact us and let us know how to get your prizes to you if you win. If you want to try and procure Holly's books on your own, Holly, how would they contact you on Twitter?
On Twitter, you can find me at HuntPants. It's weird. That's my Twitter handle, but talk to me on there, please.
It's not nearly as weird as me trying to give away your books 7 times
that is really weird.
In a 5-minute stand.
I don't know what happened this season with that, you wanting to give my books away. Where are your books? Why not your books?
because my books are all in Audible form. So you can probably just hack my computer and have them on your own if you want. Well, not Audible form, actually Kindle form. Anyway, you can find me at Musical Concepts on Twitter if you want to talk to me personally. And you can always find The Dust Podcast at The Dust Podcast. Get those tweets in for 3 words. You only have a couple days left. We'll be back with the book section in just a moment. Or, Holly, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Matt.
Happy New Year to our listeners as well, if your culture supports the January 1st calendar. And if not, then Happy New Year whenever your New Year is. And we'll see you next time on
The Dust Podcast.
Tweet the podcast at The Dust Podcast. Send emails to dustpodcast@gmail.com or call 314-269-0421. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Part of Double P Media, doublepmedia.com.
So you're a book reader, right? No? You're a TV person who wants to know what's going to happen in season 3? No? So why are you here? We're going to do some book spoilers here in 3, 2, 1, go. You or me first, Holly?
You can go first.
So just a couple of nitpicks, book nitpicks that don't really matter. But there was no blood moss and there was no trepanning mentioned for Japari. So any of that information we would have to get in hindsight somehow, and I don't know how we would get it. If I recall correctly, in the Amber Spyglass, even after he gets healed up a little bit by Japari, his hand still bothers him from time to time, right?
Yeah, his hand is still bleeding even after they get through the world of the dead. And I feel like they're in the Malefa world, and it's still like he still has to worry about changing his bandages. This episode did such a good job, and this season in general did such a good job of making adaptive changes that even these little nitpicks that I kind of held on to all season, after I watched this episode, I just let them all go. Like, I don't even care anymore. But I also did think he could maybe get the blood moss from Yorick. I felt like that was like an armored bear thing too, right? That they would put blood moss on their wounds.
Yeah.
So he can.
And we saw in the television show, we did see Lyra using that on Yorick after his battle. And
we know they're going to meet. So I think maybe Yorick will be the one that heals his wounds, and Will's so very guarded around anybody that maybe that'll kind of help them build trust with each other, or at least help Will build trust with Yorick. Even though he shouldn't. If he cares for Lyra and he knows Lyra trusts him, he should automatically trust him. But I don't think that'll be good for their own relationship building.
The whole idea of the Amber Spyglass, and Jane Tranter has said this, she said she originally thought that the Amber Spyglass was going to have to be outlined in 2 seasons. But she's come back on the record and said, nope, it's going to work just fine as an 8-episode season.
Oh my God, 8? Okay, I thought it'd be like at least 10.
She specifically said 8. And I guess that's what the standard order is for BBC now. So, yeah, I'm having a hard time swallowing all of that information being conveyed to most book readers' satisfaction. I think that they could find a way to make it just fine as a television show, but I just feel like there's so much in the Amber Spyglass that it's going to be really tough to fit all of that into 8 episodes of television, especially at only 50 minutes a clip. It's not even like they're going an hour.
Yeah, I kind of feel I go back and forth between this, because I think originally when you posed this question to me, I was like, no, I think they can do it. And then I recently just listened through the Amber Spyglass, and I was like, man, yeah, I don't know. Maybe they can't do it. But now I'm kind of like, maybe they can. So I don't know. We'll just see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody can do it, I have faith in Jane Tranter and Jack Thorne. I don't have any lack of trust in that. So if anybody can do it, they can. I was expecting, I guess, a little more overlap for this series, series 2, for some more of that to creep in. But I guess once you had them not even getting the knife away from back away, or the alethiometer away from Boreal by episode 5, the end of episode 5 is when that happened. It was just kind of like, whoa, they've still got quite a bit of Subtle Knife to cover, and they've been throwing all this extra stuff in, which has made that book, that's probably the smaller of the books, right? Subtle Knife?
Yeah, I think so. And like we were talking about earlier, all of my books are different, so it's kind of hard to tell even by like relative to page number, because my Golden Compass book is like kind of short and squat, while my other books are a little bit taller and thinner. But I think Amber Spyglass is probably the most, the thickest of both. I'm not going to worry about it too much right now. And it depends on where they kind of like put things and the flow of it. But I imagine the World of the Dead could be one single episode, like a bottle episode inside the World of the Dead. I think they could do that in one, with maybe like an introduction to the World of the Dead in the previous episode, and then getting out in the next episode. In the next episode, they could be what happens when they get out. And then the last episode is like them in the Malefa world and doing the thing, and then having to part ways. And then so that if that's the last 3 episodes, and they have 5 episodes to set everything else up.
Yeah.
Seems like a lot, but I don't know. And maybe
I'm just thinking there's so much stuff, the invention, the DNA bomb, all of this stuff has to be worked into the show somehow.
Oh yeah, okay. So now I'm glad you said that, because things that are introduced in Subtle Knife but were not in this season is Father Gomez going after Mary, because I think the Magisterium sends him off at the end of Subtle Knife to go and track her down and follow her through the world. So we don't see that. So we don't have a Father Gomez yet. We don't have Balthamos and Baruch, who I thought we would see meet Will at the very end of the episode, and that's kind of how it would end, is Will like, oh, I have angels, I have my own angels now. Those were kind of the main things I was really expecting to see in this finale that I didn't. But again, it was so good that I didn't miss it.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess this scene with Azrael was kind of a replacement of him sending Chevalier and Lady whatever.
Tialis.
Mm-hmm.
Lady Salmakia, sorry.
Lady
Tialis.
Chevalier
Tialis and the Lady Salmakia.
Yeah. So there was no war really between those factions, because we haven't even gotten to the point where we saw Azrael. He hasn't even gotten to the point where he's built any of that yet.
Oh my God.
So we're going to have to see, probably we'll have a skip ahead moment, and Azrael, much like he does in the books, will already have all of that done. And this was just kind of like an insert scene here as a place marker for Azrael to show the process. But I don't think we'd heard that the Azrael episode was going to be a lot of him being in Chitakaze as well. Because they had remarked about the actor that played Tulio doing such a great job in everything else, that they were really looking forward to him being in that episode, which would have placed Azrael at a time before Tulio dies. So a lot of it would have been backstory up to the point that we see him here. And that, to me, makes me worry, And then I thought, oh, well, maybe we'll see at the end of the season, or we would have seen the end result of him building all of this stuff. But we're just seeing him make the alliance right now. So that means that are other worlds even involved yet? Will we just have to take it? Will it be one of those skip ahead moments where you just have to take it on faith that Azrael has done all of this stuff off screen? Because I like the idea of all of these other worlds coming together, being introduced through Lyra or Will. Mm-hmm. Well, through Will. The angels coming to him, all of that. We don't have any of that to set it up. And it just seems like that makes Amber Spyglass that much more difficult to adapt into 8 episodes.
Yeah. Man, I wonder if they're just going to... I hope they don't because it, like you said, it is a good example of just another world with different things. But I could also see how they just cut the Galavespians too completely.
Oh, yeah.
They're not the most essential to the story in the books. They kind of drive, Will and Lyra's motivations forward, and they have to work around them. They're kind of in the way until they become on their side.
On the other hand, a lot of Mary's stuff with the Malefa, I think, can be economized down quite a bit because there's an awful lot of investigation and all of this stuff, and you can do little montages and what have you, seeing her learn the language, learning about the seeds, all of that stuff can be done very economically and very quickly. And
they can save money on Malefa CGI at the same time.
And they can save money on it at the same time. So that seems like a good showrunner tactic for that, which does cut the story down considerably. Mm-hmm. So I'm not too worried about that. Boy, I've been going on and on about this. If you don't have anything else to add on that, then what do you have about this episode?
The only thing I didn't say was I was not expecting that scene with Roger. So, and then there's the world of the dead. I'm going to be a lot more emotional than I was today. I can't. Other than that, watching this episode with my roommate was just interesting, and I touched on this a little bit, but in our regular talk, but she was asking questions about who the authority is, and she's like, wait, so we're trying to kill the authority? Is that the magisterium? And I'm like, no, the authority is God. And she's like, but the magisterium, I was like, is like the church. And she's like, so I had to kind of spell it out for her. We're using what we've seen in the show and to kind of pull it all together. And I said this earlier, she was hella confused by Lyra being Eve. And so I kind of reminded her about the serpent and Mary. And I was just like, man, okay, so maybe, and she is more of a casual viewer, like it's not something we watch it. We don't like talk about it like a lot afterwards, but she, liked the first season a lot. And when she realized she was living with somebody who was going to do a podcast on it, she was like, oh my God, let's watch it together. And she just kind of watches it and, moves on, which is fine.
We should have had her on.
Nothing wrong with that. Oh, she did say, she called the Spectres Ghosty Boys, BOIS. She made that clear, that spelling clear. And I was like, yeah, that's really good. I'm writing that down. I'll put it in the podcast for you. Good job, Lauren. Yeah. So, but it's been kind of fun watching this show with somebody who doesn't know anything, and I'll go ahead and do it here, even though he'll never hear it. My dad just told me last night that he listens to the podcast. My dad still works right now, and he gets to work really, really early. Like he leaves the house at like 4:30, 5 o'clock to go to work, and he's got a desk job. So he says before anybody's there, he just kind of does some work and dicks around, and he watches his shows that he didn't have time to watch the day before. So he'll watch his Dark Materials on Tuesday mornings. And then he said after he finishes the episode, it's still too early and nobody's really there at the office yet. So he puts on our podcast and listens to us. And he said it really helped him kind of like understand what was going on. I thought that was really cool. So Hi, Dad, even though you're not in this section because you do turn it off for the book talk. But I'll let him know that he made it.
At some point, I'll give you a clip of the end of this where I apologize profusely to your father for the way that I abuse you on this podcast.
No, he didn't even mention you, Matt.
Well, I'm not worth mentioning, that's for sure. I'm sure that if he ever wanted to submit some feedback, it would somehow get into the podcast. You don't have to use your real name.
I'm sure he won't, but that's okay.
Yeah, okay. Well, I tried. Because there'd be nothing better for me than to read scolding criticism of Holly on this podcast, and it come from you, sir.
I went fishing for just that, and he wasn't giving me anything. I was like, all right, Dad, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I was like, do I sound dumb on the podcast? He's like, no, I understand what's going on when y'all talk about it. I was like, oh.
Once again, a credit to my editing skills, ladies and gentlemen.
I know, right? Because I'm really dumb. I'm so dumb.
No. I spend the whole time editing this podcast to make myself sound smarter because she already is there. I have to try and get myself to her level.
Oh, stop.
Okay, is that it? Are we done?
I'm sure there's more book stuff comparisons we can contrast and I'm out of words because this episode, I can't do it. I'm exhausted now.
Yeah.
And as much as I want there to be a new season immediately, I'm not ready to talk about it yet. So
Yeah.
that's all I have left.
Understood. Well, folks, we're going to have a wrap-up podcast where we announce our winners and all of that, so stick around for that. In the meantime, Happy New Year. And if you want to wish Holly a Happy New Year, Holly, how do they do that?
You can find me on Twitter at HuntPants. It's weird.
It's not nearly as weird as the story about your father. If you want to contact me, it's at Musical Concepts. I finally figured out how to say my own Twitter handle there. And you can always tweet at The Dust Podcast. And we will see you next time on
The Dust Podcast.